I'm Martin Andrews from Inquire Ed, and welcome to our webinar, What Can a Citizen Do? Today's webinar is brought to you by the National Council for the Social Studies. The National Council for the Social Studies is the largest professional association in the country devoted solely to social studies education. NCSS engages and supports educators in strengthening and advocating for the social studies. Why don't you go to socialstudies.org and check out their professional learning offerings? They have a host of webinars like this one, but also offerings for you over the summer, different summer inquiry sessions, things like that. You're going to want to check it out at socialstudies.org. The webinar is also brought to you by Inquire Ed. Inquire Ed has created Inquiry Journeys, our elementary social studies curriculum, to move students and teachers beyond the single textbook, supporting culturally responsive education and inquiry-based teaching and learning. You can now get a free trial of a unit if you go to inquireed.org/free-trial. We are here today to talk about an amazing book. And that book is What Can a Citizen Do? The New York Times called What Can a Citizen Do? Required reading for future informed citizens. And the Washington Post said that it sends the message that citizens aren't born, but are made by actions taken to help others and the world they live in. I was going to give you a summary of the book, but instead I am going to show you a 1 minute or so book trailer that gives you an idea of the richness of the language and the artistry of the illustration. So let's take a moment to appreciate both. Now it's time to bring on the author of What Can a Citizen Do and the illustrator, Dave Eggers and Shawn Harris. Dave and Shawn, if you can turn on your cameras. Hey there. And we're excited to talk about this book.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I guess a first question for this book is, what inspired this book? Why was it written? Why was it created?
Well, I'm sitting here at 849 Valencia, across the street from 826 Valencia, our writing and tutoring center that we started here in the Mission District of San Francisco back in 2002. And I think over the years, I've always seen something really electrifying that happens when you have young people given an opportunity to participate, to sort of write letters. Years ago, we did a book where we wrote letters to President Obama right after he got elected. And that sort of like awakened something in the students that was very new and very vital. And over the years, I've just had this obsession with giving young people, even as young as kindergarten and first grade, a chance to participate, to think that they could affect change in their neighborhood. They could express their opinions about national government, but they actually do have to take that first step. And I think that teachers, educators, librarians, administrators really have an opportunity to give them that platform, because they always take it. They're so ready at such a young age to give, to be responsible, to participate. What do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, I followed your lead into this one, but absolutely, absolutely.
You said that you followed the lead. I'm curious about how the two of you, who've now, I think, is three books together, maybe four. I don't know. How many books have you created together now?
I don't know. Do
You
you
don't
know,
know.
Shawn?
Three books for kids, and then I've done some novel covers for Dave too.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So when you're
yeah.
creating a book for kids, what's the collaborative process like between both of you?
Well, I follow Dave's lead. I mean, he comes up with a manuscript and says something rousing to get me started, like he just did. Yeah.
Well, the thing that Shawn does, and he did it with our book called Her Right Foot about the Statue of Liberty, is he creates a parallel story. It's never reductive. It's not, if I say something about a young person doing a certain thing, he's not just illustrating that exactly. The illustrations for what a citizen can do have this beautiful parallel story where these young people are building their own mini society, and none of that is explicitly stated in the text. So that's when I think picture books work the best, is the text is doing one thing and the illustrations are doing another gorgeous but parallel thing.
Yeah. And Shawn, you chose to do this in a mixed media kind of presentation. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
characterizing that correctly. Like,
Mhm.
first of all, what would you call this illustration style, and what about the content of the book made that choice seem like the right one to take?
Yeah, this was the second picture book that me and Dave collaborated on. The first one I also made with cut paper collage.
Okay.
Um, I liked how when we were touring and showing kids that first book, I liked how tactile. I liked watching kids pick up the book and touch touch it and see if the layers of the collage were in their printing of the book too. And I just thought that was so neat. Um, and then it ended up really suiting this second book. I think there's a real like tactile, do it yourself DIY sort of like, oh, I've cut out paper and I could do that. I could get involved with this book, and like for it to feel very human, I think was really important. So I took the collages that from Her Right Foot, I took that kind of look and expanded on it. I tried to bring out more depth. I lit these things from different angles. I made some of the cut paper dimensional and just really I wanted it to feel like a little world, like a diorama, like you could almost take the characters and move them around in these sets.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Yeah.
And there was that perfect sort of symmetry when I'm going to get the line not totally right, but like a land of latticed people. I think, and that was like when I was looking at the illustration and I was thinking about lattice work, and it was absolutely beautiful. That's where it was such synergy between the words on the page and the style of the illustration.
Yeah, that's like that one vocabulary word in the book that I figured that would stump the kids, but it's an opportunity for the teachers to sort of explain like what that means and demonstrate it with your hands, for example. And I always think, those picture books, even for the youngest readers, can sort of have a few challenging words that maybe, especially one like that that's used so seldom even as adults, but I think it's a beautiful word.
It is a beautiful word. How
I
did you
agree.
how did you decide on the things that a citizen can do? How did you choose that list?
Well, the list is so sort of general, writing a letter And I've had a lot of letter writing assignments in my classes. I usually have taught middle school and high school classes at 826 Valencia. And there's something about that that is always works, whether we do programs where they write, some of our centers, they write letters to other students across the city. Like if they're in the south side of Chicago, they'll write them to the students on the west side and just talking about similarities and differences, or they'll write to a representative, or they'll write to the mayor. We've had all of these different projects, and there's something so direct that they always take to about writing a letter, because they really feel like they can speak directly, that it's going to have that tactile fun of like licking the envelope and putting it in the mail and getting something back. But then there's simple things, like planting trees and changing laws. And I think that, and then meanwhile, you have this sort of parallel story that Shawn's telling that was based on years ago when my kids were young. They're teenagers now, but we went to this place in Idaho where we were gathering with some other families that we knew, and there was a little island on a small lake, a man-made lake, but the kids could get to the island from a little catwalk. And they spent the day there, and they had built, by the end of the day, they had a flag, they had the name of the country, they had chosen a type of government, they had all on their own. And these like 12 kids had sort of created their own society. And so Shawn and I talked about that early on, and he sort of made, his version of that, sort of what does it look like in kind of a Little Rascals way, almost like a bunch of kids using found materials on the edge of a city, almost in a swamp, like the ground, it doesn't look like such fertile territory, but they make this beautiful thing that's a product of real materials, but also some sort of fanciful dream kind of embodiment of their hopes and aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
We when we go out into schools and Inquire Ed works with a lot of teachers and professional learning. One of the things we ask them is what was one of your most memorable learning experiences? And it's never, that quiz I took or anything like that. It's always like a rich experience. So I want to pose that same question that we pose to teachers to both of you, either in school or outside. What a rich, memorable learning experience that you can share with us that gets maybe at that idea that taking action is really important?
Well, I'll say first, like in first grade, my teacher, Miss Wright, had us create books. So we had to write and illustrate a book. And I still have this today. I usually have it on hand so I can show it. It was cardboard cover, paper inside, and then bound with yarn, so the yarn has lasted now 43 years or something. I still have this. And she held us to a very high standard. Even though we were 7 years old, the book had to be perfect. There's no typos in this book that I wrote, when I was 7 or 8 years old. And we worked for a month or so on it, maybe longer. And she said it has to be as good as anything that you might find in the library. And that's sort of the basis of our center, 826 Valencia, is holding these kids at any age to the highest standards, because their work, their minds, their thoughts, and their sort of, their whatever they have to express is worth making it perfect. It's not good enough to, to be sort of, first draft. It's, if you're going to say it, you might as well make it perfect. And so that was very memorable, and has informed everything that we've done ever since. And of course, when my kids were young, they had teachers that took them out on weekly field trips, going to City Hall, going to look at the history of this building or that building, meeting actual, city council people, talking about what they do, watching city council meetings, like even at third grade, like all of these things really are impactful. They collapse that space between the student and those in power that are creating and altering laws. It's not a wide gap. You just have to go.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's this fictional distance that we feel, or, that I think young people can feel. And then they realize, like, no, the door's open. The city council meeting is public. You can go. And so those field trips meant the world to my kids.
How about you, Shawn?
Yeah, I think uncoincidentally, my first kind of big formative experience in school also happened in first grade. So shout out first grade teachers. My teacher, Mrs. Schultz, caught me selling my artwork, and this is actually when I cite becoming a professional artist. It wasn't really my idea to sell stuff, but kids started offering me fruit roll-ups and their milk money and stuff because I had done a really, honestly, a pretty great drawing. And so I figured out that I could tape my drawing to the window and trace copies of it, and I could sell those copies. Anyway, I was so excited about this new business venture that I had overlooked or forgotten that a school rule was no selling of goods on campus. The teacher caught me. I got brought into the principal's office. They called in my mom, and I was like, oh boy, I am busted. It's over for me. And they all came together, and my first grade teacher said, listen, you broke the rules, but you should keep doing this. Just do it on the weekends, not in school, but whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. Don't let this deter you. And that was so empowering and so exciting and really from that moment on, I think it was the next year I mailed a resume to the Walt Disney Company. Like, I truly thought I was just ready to join the artist workforce at that moment. So yeah, it was a really important moment.
Oh, thank you both for those stories. I just want to point out two things that connect to this idea of inquiry that the social studies community that's on this webinar really is committed to. One is that to talk about, Dave, you spending a month on a project, on a book, that is really important, because you can't ask for perfection in a day. There has to be like that iteration and that ability to make mistakes and like revise and get feedback. And it's such a part of inquiry. And then Shawn, just for a teacher and a whole system to say, listen, you broke this, but I'm following your interest. And
Yeah.
probably in supporting you that's a really those are two really powerful stories. So thank you for sharing them.
Yeah, with those examples of teachers that instead of, they know that there's a rule there that they have to sort of enforce, but they find a way to bend so that they can, channel your interest and channel your passion, and so that you're not, that enthusiasm or that spark isn't snuffed out. I have so many examples of teachers that did that found ways to kind of say, well, this is a little on the boundary, but you're on the right track, and and here's a way to sort of get around it. And that's everything, and also to tell the kids, like you said, with multiple drafts, even if that first draft is riddled with typos and everything, as tutors, we always say, this is going to be great. It's going to be great, even though, as an adult, it might take 3-4 drafts to get there. But that idea that it's a process is so key to reluctant writers, early writers. It's a process, and we're going to go through it. And after 3-4 drafts, it will be as good as anything you'd see in a bookstore. You can get there. It's totally possible.
One of the things that I feel is a beating heart of the book is this idealism that is in there. And I think that a lot of times in the world today, we see a spectrum from idealism through realism to cynicism. And sometimes that gets a timeline associated with it. When you're young, you're an idealist, and as you experience the world, maybe you become a realist or a cynic. And my question for you is where are you on that spectrum? Like, what do you think of that spectrum, and how does it connect to your desire to create literature and art for children?
Well, I think it's, that spectrum, I guess I see it following uh, a trajectory of removing oneself too from local action and local impact. If you sit in a living room watching explosive news, watching Fox News or something like that, and sort of from a distance and not participating, I could see you getting cynical and getting angry and feeling both apathetic and powerless and angry. But then for those people that actually participate, you know, um, you can have such meaningful, such measurable impact if you actually leave the house, if you actually engage locally, even if it's doing a route for the local food bank. You do a 3-hour route in a given city, which, my daughter and I started doing during COVID. Those 3 hours where you're delivering food, you just feel like, all right, I'm acting, I'm moving, I'm meeting people, there's something being done, and it's measurable, and you can go home feeling, you know, that you've had an impact in the world. But I think that it's always that removal from action that creates apathy, that creates indifference. But action cures apathy instantly.
Yeah. So if you feel yourself becoming cynical, take action. Go get involved and see if that can maybe be the antidote to that cynicism or apathy.
It's very hard to be apathetic if you are leaving the house
Yeah.
and doing something. It's very hard to say, boy, that work I did, I planted a tree where there wasn't a tree, but I'm still cynical. You don't find that. The equation doesn't add up. So I think that whenever we think about a global issue like, climate change, we can get so apocalyptic and dispirited. But then if you act locally, then you feel like, well, something was done today. So even if it's just for your own soul, you need to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with kids. Like if you're reading history books and you're reading the newspaper, there's something sort of, depressing that you might read. Again, the cure. And kids are so inherently idealistic. And all they want is just that door to open so that they can do something, and feel responsible too. Like they want tasks. Have you ever given a kid like, hey, can you carry this, to our neighbor down the street? She's gotten over a surgery. She can't move about. Bring this food. They love that task.
Yeah.
To like know that they've been entrusted to do it. And it's only going to take them a little bit, but sometimes we ask too little of kids because they're young and we're their parents and we want to protect them and they're too young to do this or that. Actually, that's not true. I think that they are always ready to be part of things, to participate, to help. They want to help. We've got to give them the chance.
Yeah, we get that a lot because we create social studies curriculum for young kids, and a lot of what we hear is they can't. These concepts are too complex, or like a democracy or citizenship. You can't start discussing that with a first grader, with a kindergartner. And so I think that response is, why not? That's actually what they're primed to do. Is to take action, and also it's about learning. If I only spoke words that a newborn knew, then I would never speak to that. Like it's through speaking and involving that learning happens, right?
Well, and also just on a very basic level, like cleaning up one school. Like if you're at a K through 8 school, everybody, my kids' school, we always had weekend cleanups and weekend improvement things. And that when everybody has to jump in and say, no, it's not just the job of the custodial staff. It's a group project. We have to maintain this place that we're learning in, that we love. Like, it's not, we can't have all this endless division of labor. We're all equally responsible. So even on that level, even if it's not concepts like democracy and voting or, bicameral legislatures or anything like that, we can say, no, being responsible, being part of this community, being part of that lattice work, doing your part, picking up something on the ground that you see that needs to be thrown away. That's the first muscle memory that we can teach. It says you can't just walk past that piece of garbage on the floor outside your favorite teacher's classroom. Pick it up. Why wouldn't you pick that up? And if you do that, then the kids, you see that in the kids. When they grow up with that mentality, they become such beautiful young citizens, like they really get it. And they can pass it along too. Sometimes that young leadership is very powerful, where you see a 10-year-old that everybody in their class kind of looks to as an example. So I think teachers recognize when they have those students in their classroom, they're like, he sets an example, or, but I think it's key. Like, hey, we're gonna improve our immediate environment. We're gonna do it every day, and we're all equally responsible.
Shawn, when you've chosen to create art for children as a main part of your life, what is it about that about young children that inspires you to create art? Like, what is it that what excites you about it?
I think that their kids tend to be such voracious readers and listeners. They want all of the knowledge in the world. And it's just fun to see how many rabbit holes like they will come down with you, all the digressions, all of the little storylines that just happen in the pictures of this book. I've had kids ask me like, okay, where did the turtle go at the end of the book? Or like, like things that were never even mentioned in the words. Like, right. You will get these kids, they just sort of like endlessly are telling their own stories, and just really here to be part of the work that you're making. I mean, I've never written a book for adults. I wondered, Dave, what do you find a difference in the audience, like writing for adults versus kids?
It depends. Sometimes, like this book, that What Can a Citizen Do? I think we were both conscious of a young audience, very young audience. Like it rhymes. You can memorize it. It's very brief, but you can go back and study it, just like you said, with the pictures. And so this one we did want it to be kind of like, accessible to even the youngest readers, and teachable for teachers of any grade. But often, like, I wrote a chapter book recently, The Eyes and the Impossible, and that one I never thought of an audience for a second. I just wrote it as the dog would have talked, exactly as he would have thought, and I just tried to be true to his consciousness. However, I conjured it, but that's another story.
I love how you said that you kind of were envisioning and writing this for like it to be taught in a classroom, and I just had revealed to both of you that the Inquire Ed has a social studies curriculum. It's called Inquiry Journeys, in our third unit of our first grade year. So I love that you both identified first grade teachers as these people that were seminal in your lives. We use What Can a Citizen Do as this anchor text for the whole unit. And it's a unit where each unit explores an inquiry question. And so this is a 4 to 6 week process. So it's got that length that you need for inquiry, for lots of mistakes to be made and work to be done. And it launches with an experience that activates curiosity and inspires questions. It goes through this inquiry process. And then they investigate diverse sources to build their knowledge. And they come to that point in the unit that it is so important, and I think gets to the heart of the book, is that now that we've built this knowledge about, how, if we're going to be informed, we should know fact from opinion. We should know how to have respectful discourse. Those are things that I think adults could use a refresher course on. But they built all this knowledge about what it means to be a citizen, and then they ask themselves, what am I going to do next? What do we do with this knowledge we have? And so I'm really excited to have you on, because this book is something that over the course of the unit students come back to and they reflect on. And I'm really excited to have our special guests come on. And there we see, like, just last week, they began this unit. And you can see that they're doing a read aloud of the book and some other activities they're going to talk about. So I'm really excited now to have Susan Fisher and Hannon Attia come on. Susan is a first grade teacher at Barley Sheaf School at Flemington-Rarrington School District. And Hannon is the technology integration specialist. So thanks. Yeah. Can you turn your, thank you. Hey, Susan and Hannon, thanks so much for joining us and coming in and joining us on this webinar.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, and so this is a great moment where we get to do some synergy between someone who created a book and then sort of casts it upon the waters, and then who knows where it lands. And it landed in your classrooms. And I just want to know, it looks like from the pictures that there was a process that you went through with the book in the class, beyond just a read aloud. Could you tell us a little bit, maybe Susan, what you did with the book in the class?
Absolutely. So we started out with just a picture walk to get engaged. They're very excited about it. And as we were looking at the pictures, they were making connections to it already, just through our picture walk, and very engaging. So then we began to read it, and they were amazed. The comments, some of them, particularly, what is a bear? A bear is a citizen. And they're, what? How can a bear be a citizen? And then when it referred to your citizens, we're all citizens. And one little boy said, wait, I'm a citizen? My mom said she is. That's so cool. I'm the same as my mom. And it just really sparked a lot of excitement for them. So when we finished up the book and had a little discussion afterwards, we talked about then the difference in rights and responsibilities, and what are your rights as a citizen, and what is your responsibility as a citizen. And like you said before, for some people, and when you first think of that, it's a big idea for a 6 or 7 year old, but they came up with so many great ideas and sparked really good conversation. So it was an excellent launching tool for us as we began the unit.
Yeah, so it's really the launch to the unit. Is that right? And then
Correct.
Hannon, it looks like you're filling out a chart, or what's going on in that picture up there that we can see.
Yeah, so I had the privilege of reading it out loud after Susan did the picture walk. So so my instructions to the students were the discussion questions. I was asking them to actively look for examples of rights and responsibilities. And like Susan said, we did think that may have been a complex question to ask first graders, but you would be surprised. They were able to decipher from the reading what was a right, something that they had a right to be safe, a right to be kind, and what were their responsibilities like treating people kindly, a really young elementary level scenarios of rights and responsibilities. And I would stop throughout the book whenever they found one of those examples, and I noted it on the chart, and that chart stays with them throughout the whole unit. So later on, when they take informed action, they have examples to draw from.
And I know that they had some questions, maybe. Did they? I don't know, Susan, if you had a chance to tell them today that you were going to be able to talk to the author and the illustrator. Tell us about that conversation you had today, and did they have any questions for Dave and Shawn that they can answer?
So first of all, they were very excited. They're like, "You're going to meet famous people, and can we see the video?" And they were super excited about it. They did want me to convey to you that they loved your book, and they're glad that it's going to be with us for the next several weeks. So they were very excited. Their questions I thought were interesting. We have had another author and illustrator visit our school earlier this year, and they were wondering if you use some of the same processes that the other authors did. So they were just wondering what materials you used and how many times did you have to rewrite your book? Do you like to start by writing it out in hand, or do you start on a computer, or what does your process look like?
Well, for the writing side, this one I did write the first draft by hand,
Okay.
which I often do, but not always. And then I probably did 10 or 11 drafts of just the text. It's only a page of text, really, but to get the rhymes and the meter right, you have to keep shaving off syllables here and there and thinking of a word that might be a little bit more concise and rhyme better. But tell your students that even now, after I've done a lot of books, I still average about 11 to 12 drafts of anything of any length before I feel like it's done. And so even if nobody's first drafts are good necessarily, I actually had the next book I have coming out it's called Soren's Seventh Song, and it's about a whale making a whale song and how he keeps thinking his first version of it is perfect and he's going to go sing it to the world, and then all of his friends say it's not so good yet, go back to the drawing board. But that's just to sort of say everybody can get there to that level of competence and excellence with draft after draft, with their teacher's guidance and peer editing. And once that's established, everything becomes so much easier. Those students that say, "Oh, I'm not a good writer," because maybe their first drafts aren't perfect. Well, nobody's are, So anyway, tell them 11 drafts and they better do 11 drafts too.
Shawn, how about you?
Yeah, I did many different iterations of this of the art from the book until I reached the final images that you see. Your kids asked about what materials I used. I mentioned I used cut paper, but an interesting thing about this book was that I actually used no glue. I didn't want anything to be stuck in place and rigid. So once I cut out all the characters and the shapes and put them down on my paper, I had to be very careful not to have a window open on a gusty day or to sneeze, because then I would have to start all over. And that did happen a number of times. But so I was there with my tweezers moving paper around. But I liked being able to, have change at the last moment when a kid was going to be located on the page, and to be able to use some of the same elements from page to page and kind of inhabit this island, this drainage ditch island, sort of in real time. Yeah. And you also watched the video at the beginning. That was all just stop motion stills of the actual characters from the book. So I was also able to make that, which was fun to do alongside the book. Yeah.
And I know you spoke to the characters and cutting them out. They did ask the question of the character that is in the window, and
yes,
on a few of the pages towards the beginning.
Yep.
And they were wondering if there was, I guess in adult words, a significance to that person. They kept asking, "Why is that person there?" And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, for me, so you can see right here on the title page, you've got this like sliding glass door window in a house in the background, and the title is actually in a speech bubble right here. Later on throughout the book, we keep on checking in with that character, and so to have one kid removed from the rest of the kids in this book, I think sort of by design was as a stand-in for the reader reading this book, wondering maybe the same thing, what can a citizen do? And for that kid to eventually become welcomed and involved in the activities that they've been watching throughout the book. It's sort of that, that extension of a hand to bring the reader in at the end.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
So you can tell them that that's them in that window.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So a book like this is inspiring action. And maybe can both of you talk a little bit about, first of all, what action are the kids going to take at the end of this unit? They've got a lot more things to explore, a lot more knowledge to build and skills. Do you know what action they're going to take? And how do you determine that, or what's the process? And also, are there other actions that are similar to the ones that Dave was talking about that students in your school have done this year as they've done social studies throughout the year?
Well, I think I can speak to the process, and Susan can probably speak about the examples in the school building. The process mirrors a lot like what Dave was referring to about having several drafts. The process starts with a prototype, and we're using the word, this is a prototype, and we explain to the students what that means. They have several opportunities to discuss it, pick which department they want to work in. For example, if we have an artistically inclined student and they want to just participate in the art piece of the final project, they get to do that. It's very student driven. And then ultimately they have a first draft, they get to practice presenting it, and then they have their final presentation, which ultimately becomes presenting it to the community and in some form or another.
So so I hear the action of creating the project itself. Are you looking for some sort of effect for that project to have?
Yeah, that's the end goal. We're hoping to get to that point. And I think it was Dave that said earlier that young children just want to help. They want to be a part of it. They're programmed to do that. They want to get out there. And so with our first two units, we really did allow them to steer the boat or the car. Where are we going to go with this? And how are we going to impact our community? And so they came up with so many different ways and ideas that we could really get out in our community and make a difference. And that's exactly what we did. So when you ask, do we know where this unit's going to go and what it's going to look like as far as informed action at the end? We absolutely do not right now. We're just getting launched. We're learning. Today we were learning how to respect others' opinions, as you spoke about, and how to gather information to make informed decisions while still respecting others and hoping to make a change. So really, there's so many different directions we can go. And based on our first two units and the ideas they came up with, I'm excited to see what's to come with our final unit.
And I know that they create something called an inquiry challenge statement, which I think is almost like a mission statement. Can you tell me a little bit about, like, this is an example from your district, not from your classroom, that we will create posters in order to inspire our families to donate healthy food to our community food pantry. Like, what are the different elements of that statement that the students are working to create?
So this was actually created by another first grade classroom here at the school that I am at. And so they're looking for the modality of how they want to make a difference. In this case, the class decided they wanted to create posters. Why do you want to create posters? What is the goal? What are you working towards? Okay, we want to inspire other families in our community to do what? The action is to donate healthy food. And why? So we can give it to donate it to the community food pantry to make a difference here.
So it serves as that thing that kind of guides them throughout the creation process?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It seems like I think everybody needs an inquiry challenge statement for like, for the things that we create. What do we want them to do in the world? That's really, really wonderful. So one of the last questions I have is for all of you, and in this environment where that we're in right now, where it seems like there is a hyper focus on the elementary classroom, on what's being taught in schools, on social studies in particular, and the word action has taken on almost a negative feeling or been promoted as something negative. Do you feel that in the classroom, and how do you respond to it? And then maybe Dave and Shawn, how do you respond to that as artists and creators who are creating things for young students? So I don't know, Hannon or Susan, how would you respond to that?
Well, I think about the inquiry question for the unit. The inquiry question is, how can we work together for the good of the community? There doesn't seem to be anything controversial about that. So from there, then we just present the sources. I always think about it. I think we're just presenting multiple sources, multiple opinions, multiple perspectives. The students are able to go through them, discuss them, have conversations about them. And from there, they become passionate about the topics they want to pursue.
I really like that as an answer. That's a good answer, because we're not telling, we're not indoctrinating or anything, we're presenting, and then the student agency is almost the response to that criticism. Anything from you, Susan, on that?
No, I would agree with what Hannon is saying. I think the way that we present the question at the beginning, and then there's so many sources and so much information, and really so much great discussion. And it's really interesting to just step back and listen to the conversations that the children have between themselves, amongst themselves. And then when we come back together to share, it's really their exploration, and they arrive at their own place.
But Dave and Shawn, from your perspective, there is this controversy or manufactured controversy about students taking action that is present in the political sphere in our polarized society. What's your response to that? Dave, you talk so much about writing letters, and if you noticed in the news, like I did a few days ago, that there was a bill that was passed, and inside that bill was tucked the provision that students could not directly write letters to their political leaders.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was, I'll have to, someone maybe on the chat knows what state that was in, and it was a surprise, but like, that's disturbing, but it's also talks to something about the power of taking action too.
Well, there was also just yesterday, I think, reported that civics and history test scores are quite low right now. They're at a alarmingly low place. And I feel like if anything comes out of this moment of illiberalism and sort of shutting down, banning books on one side and discouraging student activism, maybe we have a reawakening about teaching civics from the youngest age, teaching participation from the youngest age, so that it becomes just not even remotely a matter of debate, that the students get so hooked on being involved, having a say in their societies, their communities, that you can never take it back, if that makes sense. But I think we got to teach it. We have to exercise that muscle from kindergarten on, and not have it be an occasional thing, but have it be woven into how the students see themselves in a society, as no matter who you are, you have an equal voice. No matter where you are, you have an ability to participate. And so that's why the book Shawn's illustrations are so inclusive, I think, and so beautiful in that way. And even a bear is welcome to join in and help build a utopia of some kind. But I'm around kids of all ages all the time, and it's never not inspiring. It's continually, they are just an endless source of inspiration, and I think sort of resilience. They're so resilient, and even after COVID, they've bounced back, I think, remarkably in my experience. But I do think that civics as a topic has got to be part of this democracy's curriculum. That word, we have to know what it means. We have to teach it every day, just like Susan and Hannon are doing. Like, we've got to make that core, because if we don't, we're in schools, we're creating citizens, right? And we're creating Americans, we're supposed, and I think as long as the students know that that's part of the task, is to become well-educated, well-informed citizens that have all the information that they need to participate meaningfully in the democracy, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah. Susan, I wanted to ask, what was it like to hear these two artists and credit their first grade teachers and name them by name? Do you I'm sure it's hard. You don't feel the effects that you have as a first grade teacher. But I just wanted to get your reflection on that.
I did find it very interesting. I think sometimes as educators, we forget the difference that we make. We put all we have into what we do, and it's sometimes you forget that we are impacting these lives so significantly, and memories and development in who children are that lasts a lifetime. So I appreciate that they both had great first grade experiences, and it's carried with them. So thank you.
Don't you forget it, Susan.
Thank you.
You're not allowed to forget that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say that one of the things that we're giving away in addition is and Hannon and Susan, you each are going to get a copy of this book. And it's Dave and Shawn's new collaboration. And I wonder, Dave and Shawn, if you could just give us a quick rundown of what this book is about and what you're excited about.
This is a chapter book for all ages that is about a dog named Johannes, who is sort of the guardian of an urban park and making sure that everything goes well there. He zooms around the park every day to make sure that everything is as it should be, and then deliberate with a small committee of other animals about what needs to be done when things are awry. And you can see Shawn's artwork there, where he's painted the dog Johannes into these lush landscapes representing the park.
And that seems like a little bit of a change for you from other illustration styles. Shawn, talk to us about these. These look like old master landscape paintings that are in this book.
Yeah. This book was an entirely different process than I've ever done before. I think something both Dave and I are interested in, a through line between What Can a Citizen Do and this book, is sort of providing layers to the art, I guess I don't want to say complicate, but endlessly providing more and more layers for the reader to be able to mull over. The dog in this book is sort of obsessed with art made by humans. So to use these old oil landscape paintings and insert the dog into them in a way that feels like, was this dog always here? Did I just not recognize the dog in these sort of paintings from this era before? Some of these paintings might even look familiar to you, and you're like, oh, there's a dog running through the middle of it. I guess I didn't notice before. it just kind of served as an optical illusion. It sort of folds in on itself in an interesting way. Dave art directed this one. I had actually read like 2 chapters of this book when I got started on doing the art, and it wasn't until late in the process that I got to see how it all wove together. And I'm really Dave gave me a copy of this book. The first copy I got, he wrote on my end papers, Shawn, we did it. How did we do this? And I feel the same way. It's just like looking through this thing. I think it feels really classic because of the era of some of these paintings, and the way this book was printed. But then it also feels like, wait, but it's brand new, and it's really exciting. Yeah,
That's so great. So everyone out there, follow us on Instagram, comment on our What Can a Citizen Do post with something a citizen can do, and we'll send you a copy. And then Hannah and Susan will send you a copy, and maybe you can read it with your kiddos. One of the things I would love to invite, Susan, is for you, when you get to your action phase, to send us some pictures, and I can pass them along to Shawn and Dave through Amanda, the publisher of McSweeney's, and I'm sure they would love to see what action you finally take and what you do to make your community better as a class. And I would love to see those, and I'm sure Dave and Shawn would like to see them as well.
We would.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining us today. What a great discussion. It's, like I said, wonderful to have the 2 creators of something that's so instrumental for our curriculum, and then the musicians kind of that bring that score to life, the teachers in the classroom every day. So it's wonderful for our audience to see this interaction as well. Thank you so much, everybody.